Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Show to Be with Mike G, the show of life, the show of coming out later in life after having been married. The show is about whiskey. This conversation is pretty brilliant. Today's guest, Mr. Chris Seals, co-founder and CEO of Still Austin. Let's talk about Still Austin for a moment. You have a full functioning distillery that will exist in South Austin that allows you to learn about whiskey, allows you to craft your own whiskey as a consumer, has a beautiful tasting room, and they're just neighbors down the street from us at Genius Liquids. This is a great project. It's something completely pioneering and innovative in Austin and spirits in Texas. But the bigger theme here is bonding. Bonding with your father over whiskey. Chris has an amazing story, has done a lot of different things in a lot of different industries, but this Still Austin project is really founded on love and a love of whiskey. So I hope you guys enjoy this chat with co-founder and CEO of Still Austin Whiskey Company, Mr. Chris Seals.
Not a alcohol enthusiast. The place where it started for me was I'm kind of unusual in the sense that I think almost everybody that is in the alcohol business had like a love for the spirit. That's kind of where their root started.
Sometimes, yeah, sure.
But mine is kind of different. And this is just for me personally, not Still Austin, but just for me personally. My dad, he had retired. Mm-hmm. He and I, we had a relationship, but not like a really deep relationship.
Sure. But did you grow up together?
We did. Okay. We did. We grew up together, and then I'm gay. I came out.
Yeah.
And that really was kind of, for my dad and kind of like my family background, that was really hard for them to accept that.
What part of the country are we talking about?
East Texas.
East Texas. Okay. So I knew it had to be someplace a little bit more kind of.
Yeah, maybe not. I mean, East Texas is great, sure. But. It was just kind of, it was different.
Yeah. When did you come out?
I didn't come out until really, I kind of came out in a long process, but really like fully out, going back about 5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So
pretty recent then.
Yeah. So like when I came out, like they had a really hard time accepting.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I do. I have 2 brothers and a sister.
So are you kind of the odd man out in that respect?
Yeah, definitely.
It's even more difficult then.
Yeah, it just kind of, everybody else kind of fits the, quintessential mold. And so, and then I was married to a woman before and got divorced, and that was really hard for everybody to kind of accept. And my dad, though, he made a big impression on me when I first said, okay, I've got to kind of make a change in my life here. And, he had a really hard time with it, but he, after I said, hey, I'm getting divorced, he called me. He said, hey, I really kind of wish I had come to see you face to face to tell you this, but I really want to tell you it right now, and I don't want to wait. But I understand that you think you are doing what is best for you and for your family. And I want you to know that I do not like it one bit.
Wow. Why was he so... What? Yeah, go ahead.
But I am going to support it 100%.
Thank you, okay.
It was so... And I remember just being like so taken back by that.
Yeah.
That he's going to support, like, this is really hard for him to accept, but he's going to support me 100%.
That's amazing.
It was huge.
What kind of industry? What kind of guy is he? Like, is he an oil guy? Is he a farmer?
He's an interesting guy. Yeah. He's kind of He's got a kind of a cool background. He has a career in the beverage industry.
Oh, no kidding.
And he created the brand Sunkist in the late 70s and early 80s. And
pretty good.
Kind of took it through its first couple of years. So he had amazing. Like a lot of background in beverages.
So to say that it wasn't in your DNA is probably
it's definitely in my DNA in that regard. And Sunkist back then was the first non-cola soft drink. So it was kind of revolutionary in its time. It kind of changed the whole world of what soft drinks were.
Was it the first? Was orange the first one?
It was the first orange
that's
drink.
Amazing.
So anyway, so he was instrumental in creating that with a group of really small, intimate group of about 5 people. And this is kind of a similar sort of thing like with Phil Austin.
Yeah,
but what happened for me was about a year or two after that, he came to me and said, I am bored. He's retired. I want to start a whiskey distillery. Will you help me? And I said to him, I will help you 100%.
That's amazing.
I'm going to get behind it.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know quite what that would mean because I just really thought what it would probably mean, doing a lot of feasibility studies.
Sure. You know the money part of it, right?
I have learned through the years that 99% of all good ideas are actually bad ideas.
That's right.
And,
until you turn them into a good idea, right?
Well, so I kind of went into this thinking this is a bad idea, but it's a really good idea to get to know my dad. And I thought, we're going to go from distillery to distillery, tasting their products, and we're going to bond and have kind of a rebuilding of our... Yes.
That's incredible.
It's going to be awesome. And do you know that whiskey is the way that we came to know each other? It became this really, really special thing for rebuilding my relationship with my dad.
Yeah. That's beautiful, man.
It was awesome.
It really is.
Really, you cannot believe how good it's been.
What kind of guy is he? A Scotch guy, bourbon guy?
He is a bourbon guy.
Yeah, I love it.
He loves bourbon. He's like an amateur winemaker, and he makes all sorts of stuff. Like he's very he likes to tinker with things. He likes
I bet
he loves
quite
to play
creative,
around.
but
Very
also
creative,
scientific,
unbelievably creative. And so anyway, we started visiting different distilleries. We've visited probably about 100 distilleries across North America.
Wow.
Now, just seeing like how does everybody do it? Like what do they do, and learning from their experiences. Because like one of the things that we noticed early on, so like putting on my economist hat, I started looking at the market.
Sure.
And it was like one of the first things we ran across was just ADI studies saying before Prohibition, there were 8,000 distilleries in the United States. And then we kind of look at like, who are the whiskey makers of today? 90, there's like say, we don't know that I can put an exact number, but about 98% of all whiskey made in the United States today is made by 18 distilleries in Kentucky and Tennessee.
That's fair.
So
absolutely,
for the last 83 years post-Prohibition, no innovation necessarily. In fact,
not large spread anyway, right? Like it's just totally cloistered in like small little spots.
Yes. Let me say, like I see Prohibition as a really interesting time in American history, but I think this is even more interesting because we're like on the edge of craft spirits.
It's almost the opposite of Prohibition.
It is.
The influx and the promulgation of distillers all over.
Yeah. There's so much new thought. People are, I know for us, like we see whiskey as kind of fitting kind of within a box of the standards of identity, but we really want to push the edges of that. Be able to be more experimental with our whiskey making and not try to emulate what has been already done very well in Kentucky and Tennessee.
I cannot agree more. Like sometimes, because there's obviously lots of distillers in Texas making whiskey. A lot for us, I guess you could say. But at some point, I got to go back to and say, is this as good as the $20 bottle of Buffalo Trace? You know what I mean? Because if I'm trying to beat that or trying to be that, it better do it. And we're just not there yet. So to your point, the innovation piece, perhaps that's the linchpin. That's exactly where you start to thrive and create new markets.
And for us, like my family, so on my mom's side, we come from like a farming family.
Okay.
The farm that I grew up on, going to every summer and kind of spending all of my childhood on, my great grandfather homesteaded it. And now it's been like in our family over 120 years.
That's amazing.
And so we have like this big, long farming tradition.
What were you guys growing on the farm?
What we grew, now we grow primarily soybean, but corn, tobacco back in the day. It was a big cash crop. Not anymore, but still today, primarily corn.
That's crazy.
And so like having grown up kind of within sort of a farming community and farm economy, I kind of had like a certain view of what it is to have a connection to the kind of the terroir element of food and beverages.
So feeling connected.
Yes.
Because it's interesting. It seems like you have a couple punctuations or a couple chapters where you go academic. You say, I think you were U of H finance, right? Mm-hmm. So you're doing finance, you get that degree, but the thing that makes it different, and I think it makes you more connected and more rooted, no pun intended, you understand the cost to the land.
Yes,
you smelt it. Your hands have been dirty.
Absolutely.
A lot of guys don't get to go into that depth.
Mm-hmm. And to us, like, okay, so we like developed this whole, not me, but like our team. We have like a little. There's a group of us. There's 6 of us that were kind of had the same vision of creating an Austin-based whiskey distillery.
Yeah.
My dad and I, Lisa and Andrew Braunberg and Sal and Joanna Salinas, all from different backgrounds. We actually all met at a whiskey making class, and we were all wanting to start this in Austin. And we were like, we should start together.
That's crazy.
And so it was kind of a lucky find that we had this little group of people that we all became friends and wanted to start a whiskey distillery. But like as we began looking at, well, what would be an Austin-based whiskey? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of thought that went into that.
What does that mean, right?
Yeah. And for us, we think of craft kind of existing on 2 axes. One is kind of the terroir, the taste of this place, having been made in this place, being of this place.
Aged this place.
Aged this place. Yeah. The other element being the technique. What do we do different from a technique standpoint, which is kind of more common to more akin with the brewing. Like breweries tend to not have a lot of focus on the terroir of their grains,
right.
But they do have a lot of focus on different techniques with the same inputs, different outputs,
water pH, which is an interesting one because it's not really terroir, but it is in fact something that is native to the beers that they're trying to emulate.
Absolutely.
Limestone filtering with the bourbon and everything.
The type of mill, how freshly it's milled, all of those sort of things. Those techniques kind of affect the flavor of the final beer.
Yeah, so many things to consider.
And so I look at these guys in Kentucky and Tennessee, and I wonder, from an economist standpoint, why is it that these 18 people still control 98% of the market,
sure.
right? We've had solidly major innovation in every other food category, every technology. Like you think about how compare today with 1933, and there's very few things that you can say are basically the same in 1933 as they are today.
Yeah.
And so we had kind of not a lot of innovation in the whiskey space during this time. So why is that? One part is the laws kind of making it difficult, but you don't really see that as much in gin or tequila or other spirits categories. Lots of innovation and daring, kind of edge pushing. What I see is kind of another sort of. I don't know that I can really fully say this is entirely the reason for it, but I'd say it's a significant part. I think that these guys in Kentucky and Tennessee, they really created a barrier to entry with the aging component of their
they had
story,
to start, didn't they?
Right?
Yeah.
So kind of historically, kind of rolling back the clock, say another 50 years earlier, most whiskey made in the United States was consumed without being aged or matured in a barrel. It may have been moved in a barrel, or you may have been able to get it locally, where you
light whiskey,
light whiskey, or like the barrel component was about transportation as much more so than it was about flavor development.
Right. Okay.
So being able to take bourbon from Kentucky, down the Mississippi to New Orleans, you have this kind of development of aging as a part of the product, or that makes a good component of the product. But I actually think as time has gone on, that has been kind of bolstered as a barrier to entry. So and if you go to any Kentucky, Tennessee distillery, the first thing that part in the tour, what they'll do is have you taste their new make whiskey, and it will taste extremely shitty because they want it. I think honestly, they want it to taste bad.
Really?
I do.
What?
Because it's all about the distillation technique, right?
Yeah.
And your choices at that point.
You're right. I think a bad new make makes a bad old make, though. You know what I mean? You can get... I mean, this is the good thing about whiskey is that it is an art. And so, you'll like certain variations of it and conversely, But I don't know, it's interesting point.
My observation, it is distilled typically at a low proof.
Sure.
It does have a lot of things going on in it. Some people do like it. Depends on how developed their palate is and things like that.
Right.
But in general, there's been kind of a global trend towards more neutral spirits at different, kind of over the last 2 centuries. And you have this product that generally tastes bad, and then you kind of follow it up with a product that tastes amazing that's been in the barrel for 10 years.
Right.
And so it kind of reinforces a perception that bad before the barrel, awesome afterwards. So like the aging component of the production is really the art, or is a lot of the intrigue. So as a starting point, as a innovative spirit, we kind of look at kind of globally, what is aging? Right. In Scotland, it's a 10-year process where the whiskey doesn't get very warm or cold, doesn't expand or contract very much. It doesn't push into the barrel very often.
Not like it does would here, especially.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you compare, say, Scotland with, say, Kentucky, the instead of a 10 or 15-year product, you're looking at a 4 or 6 year product. Then take that same aging process. It's no different necessarily, but look at it in a place like tequila. Where typically most aged tequilas are aged for a year. Maybe a small portion is aged for 2 years, and a very small for 3.
Right.
Or look at agricole rum. Maybe a year or maybe 2. So in warmer climates, the maturation of the spirit tends to kind of reflect that climate getting hot and cold more often,
right,
and a faster maturation overall. And
I think I know where you're going.
Yeah. So we don't really have a preconceived idea of what the aging and maturation ought to be,
right,
in a place like we have in Austin, where it does get hot and cold a lot. We want to be open to that, kind of accept what the climate provides for us. But as a starting point, especially kind of economically, thinking of being a startup distillery and being in a time of innovation in spirits, and also kind of looking at who's leading the way in spirit innovation, it's more of a millennial revolution, really. The younger people are kind of
they're getting empowered. Chris. This is the thing, is a good piece of the conversation. People with so much information now, they feel like they can make the decision they need to make without anybody telling them
that they can,
and that's the opportunity, right? So it's like, okay, well, self-discovery, right?
Absolutely.
That's how brands are, and that's how whiskey is, and in a way, that's why I think brands like Old Rittenhouse or Old Granddad just will have their place, because no one's Beam's not putting a bunch of money behind it in the case of Old Granddad, so people will discover it.
Yes, I think that there's a space for almost every spirit in kind of today's world. It doesn't you look at kind of what beer was 20 years ago. Most of the market dominated by 3 brands. Today, you look at the beer shelf. I mean, there's so much variety,
decentralized,
right? Totally. But it's still quite centralized to an extent, but
much better than it was.
Way better. And
ago,
and what you find today will not be what you find in 3 months on the shelf. And so there's the opportunity for ongoing innovation, not a new innovation that now takes a place, kind of its own throne.
Right.
But it has it's kind of going somewhere, and there's kind of an ongoing movement within the craft spirits market that I think that will be. I think that what we see in beer now, which is 20 years ahead of us, we will see that in craft spirits, and we are seeing it now, because you see things kind of come and go, and customers kind of finding something new, like to your point about people being able to discover a spirit that's not really have a lot of marketing dollars behind it, but
discover it despite the history of it, which has it's a century worth probably with Old Granddad. But.
Right, yeah, and that's kind of the intrigue, right, with Old Granddad, is that you can kind of discover kind of all the background behind this. There's a great tradition. It's kind of cool, and you can kind of identify with that element as much as you could identify with something else for different reasons. And the two don't have to be competing necessarily in the same category, even though they both could be whiskeys. But for us, we felt like, and I think partially because of farming background, and several of us on the team have a farming background, we thought that the beginning of making an Austin-based whiskey needs to have a focus on local grown grains,
right,
provided by Texas farmers. And what we found when we started to kind of look was that here locally, the infrastructure to be able to bring grains to market has been decimated. It is gone. If I go to buy grains, I can go to the closest grain elevator, which is 300 miles away.
Wow.
And I'm very likely to get grains grown in Europe.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that it is grown right here.
Right.
And then so you start to look at like, well, what happened in Prohibition? Did that actually cause a big change in grain? Because we think about like, I think about like, breads today. If I bought a loaf of bread in New York or in Los Angeles, it's probably going to taste about the same.
Right.
Whereas maybe going back 100 years, if I bought a loaf of bread in New York, it is going to taste very different from what you would get in Los Angeles because
of these mother cultures. Yeast is a huge piece of that. Yeah,
yeast, everything in the climate, and the grain variety. So we started looking at the first agricultural census in Texas happened to be in the year that Prohibition was instated.
Oh, interesting.
And so in 1919, and so. When we started looking at what were the grains that were grown here, we were astounded to find that there was a large amount of grains that were grown that were grown then, none of which are grown now.
Right.
But they were grown primarily for their flavor.
Interesting.
I've been looking at every day. I kind of try to go through a couple more articles in the Austin Statesman, which is the predecessor to the Austin American Statesman newspaper. Kind of looking at like the history of Prohibition, which you can now look at online. It's searchable too.
It's amazing.
Really nice.
Yeah,
it's great. But anyway, I was running across something the other day where, putting on my economist hat again, in today's dollars, $1.2 billion in farm receipts wiped out by Prohibition.
Oh, Jesus.
And primarily for grains grown for their flavor.
Interesting. Okay.
And so now we have whiskey that is made from yellow dead corn.
Right.
It's awesome. It tastes great.
Right.
But it's, there's what we have noticed kind of in our playing around with different distillates from different grains, a distillate that comes from a Bloody Butcher red corn, it tastes completely different.
I bet.
A distillate that even with, kind of keep everything in control the same. Play with a hoppy blue corn, a Mexican green corn.
Yeah.
All of those very different flavor profile and indigenous to our area, not to Kentucky and Tennessee.
Right.
And so
I see the competitive edge kind of breaking forward here.
We see grains as a great place to start.
Yeah.
It's the simple grains can make very different and amazing spirits.
Sure. And God only knows what the blending of those grains would do. Right?
Absolutely. And so we wanted to start with what makes sense for us from a terroir standpoint.
Yeah.
What is an Austin-made whiskey? First it needs to come from this place. It needs to be of this place.
Mm-hmm.
What that means for us is we have started partnering with Barton Mill,
which is a new
mill. With Miche, and then we want to kind of bring in a number of different bakeries. But there's really, for Austinites, I think, a great opportunity to have a local grain economy.
Right.
And that could go to brewers as well, or anybody who uses
especially
grains.
here, you're right.
Yeah. And so, but like right now, that infrastructure is not there, so it has to do with putting in place things like grain silos and grain cleaning.
Milleries, is it called?
There's mills. We fresh mill on site, and other mills you can buy. Like bread makers tend to like to have their own mill because the adjustments in the milling can have a difference in the. Well,
what about malting?
Flavor.
How about that? Is malting?
Malting, absolutely, and we have we obviously have a maltster here now in Leander.
I like it. Yeah.
And so, but we think that there's a great opportunity for a local grain economy. And so we've started to try to kind of partner with those folks to build that infrastructure. And it means like real investment, not just on the part of the farmer, but on the part of the buyer as well.
Yeah.
Like Barton Mills, they invested in a system to be able to clean the grain so we can actually take it from farm to market and have it ready for it to be milled for use in whiskey.
Yeah.
That was a major investment that they kind of will benefit from being able to kind of build that piece of the supply chain.
Well, it's interesting. So most people, they're hopping on a train that's already moving.
Yeah, right.
So yes, whiskey, sure. I mean, people drink whiskey. You're going to sell whiskey in Austin, make it in Austin. Of course, that'll work, right? On paper, especially as an economist. But the fact that you have to change the economy itself,
yes,
and the actual infrastructure to accommodate the innovation. I mean, that's a massive thing. It's like Lake Havasu City. I just watched this thing, right? So Lake Havasu City, they brought in the London Bridge, transported it, planted it in the middle of the desert just so people would come. They changed the infrastructure. So in other words, like you're making this massive investment to change, because eventually people's minds and hearts will change.
Yes.
But you have to make it available first.
And the hearts and minds side of it too, we think that there's a lot of opportunity for, just people who are whiskey geeks that want to try out different things.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this is a great, city for geeks and laboratories and innovation, edgy thinking. And so we also see we've been talking kind of a lot about the terroir side, which is a big part of our approach.
Yeah.
And we're really lucky to have a lot of urban farms here, by the way. That,
do some brandies, right?
Yes, we could do some brandies because we've got some great grapes here.
Yeah.
But the East Austin farms have been very warm to us, having a small plot of a grain that is no longer available.
Wow.
So if we're able to get a half cup of seed, we could grow a small plot there when we do have some things in the ground now that literally are grains that were grown pre-prohibition for their flavor that are not available now. You cannot go to a market and buy them.
Yeah.
They take a couple of seasons and harvest to be able to kind of have enough seed to be able to do something with. So we have forward-thinking urban farmers that kind of are interested in bringing back some of that original.
Because biodiversity is a massive problem.
Yes.
And so if they said, "Oh, you want to go through the painstaking labor of growing these grains?"
They'll give us the
Please
land
do it. Yeah.
Right.
Here's some seeds. Hell, here's a hoe.
They didn't give us the seeds, but they gave us the hoe, right? The land.
Yeah.
Which is great. And so on the technique side, though, we really did not Still Austin. It's a bit of a bigger operation, I'd say, than most craft distilleries, because we wanted to have the ability to do everything in-house, from milling, mashing, fermenting, distilling, barreling, bottling, everything. And that's very rare to find right now in the whiskey industry. There's a lot of focus just on buying whiskey that's already been aged in another environment and blending.
It's easier. It's cheaper.
Right. It's cheaper. It's easier. But and there's some artistry. I mean, that is one of the elements of whiskey making is blending together of different barrels of whiskey because each barrel does taste different.
Yeah.
But we don't want to be limited just to that one art. We want to have kind of a broader spectrum. But we see no reason why Austin should not lead the way. I mean, we have a lot of millennials that live here. A lot of millennials move here. A lot of forward thinking. Still Austin should be a place where it's kind of a maker's lab. Test your senses, test your techniques.
An incubator.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so we were very lucky, as you probably have discovered, there's not a lot of knowledge out there about how to build a whiskey distillery. These guys in Kentucky and Tennessee, they like
intentionally.
To do that. Absolutely. So we were very fortunate to find Michael Delavante. Michael Delavante he was the master distiller for Appleton Rum.
Oh, wow.
He's 85 years old.
Where does he live?
He currently lives in Toronto, but he's Jamaican. He's a Jamaican white guy.
Cool.
You cannot understand anything that he says.
I love that.
If he will write it down, you can understand it. And Mike was very bored at home.
Yeah.
He had literally, I've been in distilleries with him. I went to the Woodford Reserve Distillery with him last year, and he talked to me about the problems that they had at that distillery before it was Woodford Reserve.
Yeah.
But when he got called in to work on a problem there in the 1960s, and then he could talk about how that affected their spirit in the 70s.
Wow.
And then how they made an adjustment in the 70s and how that affected their spirit in the 80s.
Yeah.
Things like that. Things that you can't get from, there are no books on it. This is such a...
Pre-internet.
Sorry?
Pre-internet, ultimately.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally pre-internet. And then there's no information generation source, right? Like there's not a place where you go and say, I want to be on the forefront of innovation in whiskey.
Right.
Like, well,
where do you go?
Innovation isn't part of our model in Kentucky and Tennessee.
Right.
And so we went looking around the world. We were lucky to find him. Very, very fortunate. Through a back channel, we got introduced to him. And he has worked at, distilleries kind of throughout North America and Canada, Jose Cuervo and tequila. He had like a worldwide experience in spirits. And so we said, Mike, we want to design something that will be able to bring forth the flavor that we have locally in our grains. And so from a technique standpoint, a traditional bourbon still has 3 trays that are used to rectify the spirit. Mm-hmm. So you strip the alcohol out with a certain number of stripping trays, and then you have these 3 rectification trays, and they're used to kind of separate out 3 different kind of classes, if you will, of alcohol. Right. And so the great thing about those trays is that you really have a lot of control with just 3 trays. There's quite a bit of difference in the kinds of spirits that you can create with just those 3 trays. But we really wanted to have something that would give us a lot more control, because you can't really anticipate when you haven't made spirits from these grains, in about 100 years.
Right.
You can't already know what you need in order to bring out those flavors. Sure. So we designed more of a research still. Ours has 12 trays rather than 3. And it allows us to separate out more distillates
at varying levels, right?
At varying levels, varying proofs, and different chemical composition, based on the things that have come naturally from our local grains.
Yeah,
we want to be able to capture that flavor, not kind of take a rudimentary.
You want to pinpoint. It sounds like you want to pinpoint the things you love and be able to pull the things you love.
Exactly.
That makes perfect sense.
And so, the name, even the name Still Austin, was about the still itself, the technique. And it's we put a lot of effort into kind of designing a very unique still that would allow us to have more control over the spirits that we make. But we also decided that we really wanted to have a copper pot still, which is kind of more traditional for craft.
Absolutely.
But rather than make that copper pot still the focus of our production, make it an open lab. Mm-hmm. It is and kind of create the way for people to spend a day with us making their own barrel of whiskey.
I see.
And so we've got a lot of people here who are awesome brewers. I've been to so many people's homes where they've made home brews that are phenomenal, very creative, very innovative. And because whiskey comes from beer, why not extend that craft? And so we really wanted to be able to do that. So we kind of created this whole, it's called DYOB is what we're going to call it. Distill your own, distill your own barrel. And so you can spend a day with us.
Yeah.
It's made for a group. It's not made to be like an individual experience. It's made for a team. So form a team of friends or whatever. Spend a day with us. Distill your own barrel of whiskey. We'll store it on site. You can come back and taste it, see how it is maturing. And when it's done, and we kind of agree that it is mature, then we'll have a barreling party and everybody walk out with a bottle of bourbon or whiskey that they have made.
Right.
And kind of the idea with it, too, is to kind of expose the craft, kind of give people an opportunity to kind of play with it and encourage more innovation here locally.
Sure.
We would be super happy, and I was so delighted that you guys are our neighbors. But I think that it would be awesome if we had especially in our kind of quadrant of Austin.
Yeah.
But anyway, in the greater Austin area, have innovation in spirits and let Austin kind of grow up as a place to see that craft developed. And we wanted to be part of that learning, where we could not get access to this type of information, partially just because it didn't exist and partially because it existed in the minds of people who have 60 years of experience.
It's all this appearance.
Exactly.
It's not committed to page yet.
Exactly. To get that information out there, you almost need an internet of people that are kind of connecting to the craft spirits making process. But since it's still a felony to make spirits at home yourself, which is
barrier to entry, right there.
Absolutely ridiculous, and ought to change. We needed a lab to be able to do that. So we would be delighted if people came to Still Austin, participated at whatever level in either just giving us feedback on spirits that we're making, or all the way to making their own spirits at our space within our space, and then go forth, start their own operations. We may invest in them, but it's a great thing for us.
It's a crazy thing. So this is interesting. So one, give me a little more of an understanding of kind of the time frame of this. So you and your dad visiting all these distilleries around the world, Kentucky mostly. You've got access to this ex-Appleton distiller, right? Which is expert guy. Mm-hmm. So what year are we talking? Was this idea finally kind of formed?
Okay, so in 2013 is when we decided we wanted to give this a shot.
Got it.
So we had visited a couple of distilleries. We had done a little bit of feasibility study. I was astounded to see that it actually could be feasible. Yeah. I was like, okay, well, this is that 1 in 100 ideas that actually could has a good chance of working out. And we found our business partners and friends that we've kind of gotten started with. So we kind of formalized things in just right at the end of January of 2013.
Killer. Okay.
And so then we began the process of looking for a space to do this, which I'll tell you a little story. You want to hear a kind of interesting story?
Yeah, sure. Is it dealing with the city? There's plenty of those stories.
I'm going to connect why this is. I love when things that happened centuries ago affect us today.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's amazing how many things are that way.
Sure. Oh yeah.
There was a guy. Most people do not know that Prohibition in the United States actually began in Austin, Texas.
Oh, geez, really?
It did. There was a guy by the name of Morris Shepherd. He's referred to as the father of Prohibition.
Son of a bitch.
He came. I know. Can you believe it? Of all places,
know,
the drinking capital of
that's why
the United States.
We're overcompensating now.
I know. I'm telling you, but. Morris Shepherd, he was from Texarkana originally, and he moved to Austin, and he came to go to UT. He attended classes, did his undergrad. He made some friends. One very close friend, a roommate of his, later became the governor of Texas.
Oh, jeez.
Another one became a U.S. senator. And he came from a bit of a political family. Okay. He was known as being a very persuasive speaker, and he had a lot of political ambitions. He went on to law school at UT, and he began to look around and see kind of what's happening in the world. Mm-hmm. And probably the biggest political thing happening at that time was all of a sudden America was going to let women have a say in what the future of America would be by letting them vote.
Come on.
Yeah. I know it was amazing.
Talking about going back to the past now, Jesus.
And so, so antiquated back then. But he really was he was a very good political animal. He understood how to get things done, and he saw the women's suffrage movement as something that was going to happen.
Sure.
And he aligned with it pretty tightly and kind of riding on the backs of the suffragettes. He came to power on a platform saying, I will bring prohibition to the United States if elected.
Oh, jeez.
He wrote the legislation which led to the 18th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution enshrining prohibition.
Oh, no.
He did all of the political backdealing to get it ratified state by state. He was the sole author of the Shepherd D.C. Bone Dry Act, which prohibited the production, distribution, or consumption of alcohol in the District of Columbia.
Oh, man.
And he was the main author of the Volstead Act, which provided unlimited financial resources for enforcement of all of his legislation.
So all for a political career, and perhaps a lucrative one.
Well, I will say
fair?
It would appear.
Yeah. It would appear. Okay, that's
it. Would appear. You might say it's hard to tell. I mean, he's somewhat akin to a present-day Ted Cruz.
Oh.
He became sort of a Methodist while he was not sort of a Methodist. He became a Methodist as part of his political ascent. He connected with a certain demographic, and there was quite honestly a saloon culture at the time that was men only and destroying families.
I see. Okay.
And so he saw that as an opportunity to get votes and kind of make the world a better place.
Right.
These people are complicated, right?
Well, it always has the when you take away booze and cable TV, turns into The Shining. So just keep in mind.
Well, and it seemed to happen for him too. I'll tell you the rest of the story. After kind of, he was a law-making machine.
Mm-hmm.
He put in place so much restriction. I mean, it was unbelievable. However, at the height of the glory of the Prohibition era, a moonshine still producing 130 gallons of moonshine per day was found on his Texas ranch.
Oh, see? He is smart. He found a market for it. He created the market for it.
One might wonder if he was somehow involved in a underground, but he claimed to be a dry till the very last day.
Right.
And if you can believe it, on the very last day of Prohibition, when the 21st Amendment was about to be ratified, he was a senator at the time, and he took a final last-ditch effort to try to save his legacy. And he started a filibuster on the Senate floor to try to filibuster the passing of the repeal of Prohibition.
Amendment 21, right. Okay.
And he spent his entire day begging any other dry senator to come to his aid, and not one ever would.
Well, because there never has been a dry senator. There's no way. I don't care what they say.
Anyway, Morris Shepherd put in place a quagmire of laws.
Yeah.
And those laws didn't go away when Prohibition was over. The three-tier system that we have today, where manufacturers sell to distributors, distributors sell to retailers, retailers sell to bars and restaurants, and eventually to customers, is intended to make alcohol more difficult to get, more difficult to make, and more expensive for the consumer. That is its stated intent. Mm-hmm. And so all of these kind of post-prohibition laws are the sort of legacy that was left over from Morris Shepherd, our famous Austinite. Wow. And if you can believe it, those laws are the reason there has never been a whiskey distillery in Austin all the way until today.
Interesting. So what did you have to do to work with the county, to work with the city, to say, we're going to do this, guys. You with us or not?
It was a major undertaking. Yeah. I mean, like, you probably understand zoning issues.
Oh, yeah.
And as you probably know, that distilling is currently allowed in the same zones where the manufacturing of nuclear weapons is allowed in Austin. Right?
That's right.
Those are the great places. So any place where you see them making nuclear weapons in Austin, go there. You're ready to start a distillery.
That's perfect.
So
I love it.
Zoning, that's a local issue. There are things like infrastructure. You know, we don't really have places that really kind of are already pre-made to be able to support a whiskey distillery. Right. Probably one of the more interesting quirks of Austin, in the entire state of New York, there are 2 fire engineers.
That's it.
In the entire state of Texas, there are 11, 9 of which work for the city of Austin.
No kidding.
Yeah. And so at one point, I told our liaison at the fire department, who is a fire engineer, Yvonne Espinosa, happy anniversary, Yvonne. Do you know that today is the 2-year anniversary of me asking for your approval
on
our project?
That's amazing.
Because they're in the, I don't know how many pages, maybe 1,100 pages of fire code. Every single one of them were reviewed to make sure we were 100% compliant.
That's incredible.
So, like, there's this kind of, that is kind of a function of Austin, Texas.
Sure. Well, we're preserving a culture here, which is okay.
Absolutely.
Right? You know,
absolutely.
You throw paperwork at it, basically.
And you have to be local to be able to get all this crap done.
That's right.
Like, it does kind of have the intended effect. But this is a very long answer to the question of how long did it take you guys to get this done? And so we started in 2013. We're now in 2016. We will be open next year in 2017. So about a 4-year process altogether.
Because the licensing's done. I saw all the
licensing long since done. Like for federal licensing, state licensing, we're going through kind of the process with our label approvals now. We just got some actually yesterday approved, so that's exciting. But
cool.
All of the regulatory things at the state and federal level, they are there. They are time consuming, but nothing compared to the local level.
Right.
And so it just took a long time. We were fortunate. Our landlord had a vision of creating a space where people could go and have kind of a multifaceted experience of making.
Right.
Like this little part of Austin, the St. Elmo district, it has always been makers.
Yeah. Sure. It's a manufacturing.
It's a manufacturing area, but like what is manufactured today and kind of the forefront of manufacturing, it's different.
Mm-hmm.
But those different things have not found their way into this traditional manufacturing area.
Right.
And so he wanted to create the concept for the yard was to have a maker space that was a place that people could experience the things being made,
right,
kind of explore them. So it's, we've got ourselves in the yard. Then there are two breweries. St. Elmo Brewing is right next door to us.
And those guys open in December,
they're opening next week.
It's next week.
Well, I think soft opening.
Okay.
But we're super excited with them. We have Austin Winery. There's a cidery just really right across the street.
That's incredible.
And then it's other makers too, like Sup ATX. If you want to have a custom board
Sign,
made,
right?
I mean, it's the paddle boards. And so you can go and have you can have your paddleboard made, customized there on site, and they are even installing like a large swimming pool in the middle of their manufacturing facility, which is actually right across the parking lot from Still Austin.
That's killer.
Where you can try it out, and so the drop house is there, big major art installations and signs and things like that. I mean, like there's really cool makers
trying to create a district.
Exactly.
Yeah, it makes sense to kind of again push and perpetuate this culture of creators and makers. Austin's already very tech-centric, but getting your hands dirty, you got a lot to learn, right?
Yeah, exactly.
A lot to talk about there. So, all right, so we've got, you're about 4 years in, you guys say you're planning to open next year,
yes.
Right? So, talking about the products themselves and the aesthetic of the product, so like the bottles and such, because I think we've got a good idea of you wanting to be very calculated in how they taste and the methods, right? I think that's a brilliant way to approach it, dissecting it, at that almost molecular level. But for your customers, when they're in retail, let's say, what kind of experience do you want to convey with your brand?
The package?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so you can see the package on the website.
Yeah, that's
and kind of
nice.
get a sense of it. We looked around. We saw what is on the shelf from Kentucky and Tennessee. It has something that really resembles the rural Kentucky lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at Texas whiskeys in general, they have Texas Cowboys, Texas Stars,
right?
And
I'm not a cowboy. Are you, Chris?
I am really not a cowboy. I am a rural person, but I don't really desire the Kentucky lifestyle.
Right.
I'm not like dying to move to Tennessee. I am in Austin because I prefer the Austin lifestyle.
Right.
And it's urban, it's more diverse, it's more accepting and celebratory of our differences.
Totally.
And so we intentionally chose something that did not look like a regular whiskey.
It feels modern, very modern.
And it's colorful and diverse.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted something and straightforward. It's not trying to be flashy. We're not putting sex on the bottle.
Right.
We're not putting we're not putting things that are trying to like manipulate your brain.
Right.
But we are wanting to say we're independent. We are adventurous. We're innovative.
Yeah.
And this is what Austin whiskey is.
It's amazing.
So things that kind of resemble our values here, and what makes Austin really a great place to be.
What will be the first product? Because I'm sure it's going to be a vast portfolio of stuff as time moves on, especially as you experiment. But what do you consider to be, what will be the flagship products for you guys?
Okay. We have made the strategic decision that we are going to be releasing products for a while with a lot of innovation, a lot of testing. In fact, we're going to create this kind of opportunity for people to come to the distillery and help us with the kind of the development side of it. But we're going to launch with 4 whiskeys that are made to sort of push the edges of what whiskey is. So I have not actually even told anybody publicly what they are. Do you want to hear it?
Let's drop it. Yeah, okay. I would love to hear.
So our first one is going to be our new make whiskey.
Okay.
So when we started looking for our inspiration for our new make whiskey, we wanted something that spoke to our local grains, kind of all the things that I've been talking about. But we also wanted something that connected us to the culinary culture here. Sure. It makes sense for our area. So we put together a tasting panel, local mixologist, sommeliers, bar owners, people that we invited to kind of talk with us about what they taste in a distillate, what do they like in it, what they don't like.
What really lights their fire?
And there is like what they like about it, and then also we wanted negative feedback too. There's a lot of moonshine that is made that tastes quite terrible, right? Like we're not a moonshine company, and so. And we're not a vodka company. We're not a gin company. And we're creating a whiskey that is truly something that probably hasn't been made in solidly over 100 years.
Right.
And so we really had to kind of think about what makes sense for kind of all these things together. And so we had kind of a series of times where we talked with people, kind of do some tasting, give us feedback, and a fair amount of negative feedback too, to kind of help us.
You need both. You don't want just people pandering,
Exactly. But my favorite moment was my last question at every tasting panel is, what would you do with this product?
Sure.
And with our Blue Label new make whiskey, we knew we were done when they said I would serve it neat.
Nice.
So we were like, perfect.
There you go.
So it has notes from the grains that are from our area, slight caraway note, a slight,
interesting,
very, very mild. It's a very soft spirit, but it is a very mild caramel note, a very mild note of baked bread, and it's not hot like vodka.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes for a nice mixing spirit, but also. It's relatively neutral. Like it's nothing like a gin.
Right.
I mean, these are very, very mild flavors. It's very versatile for cocktail making, but very pleasant. Yeah. You can drink it by itself, and it's great.
What proof did you guys decide on?
92.
Beautiful. Perfect.
We chose a high proof for it.
Good.
And even the proofing decision was informed by our
and you
local culinary.
So you said it's a Blue Label. So
Blue Label.
One of four. I think we're going to talk
one of four.
About.
So Blue Label, new make whiskey.
At 46, 92 proof.
92
proof. 46%
exactly,
ABV.
Yes.
750s.
And 375s.
Killer. Okay.
And so the second, we looked to, we wanted to have some things that would kind of speak to our region, but make this product a little more accessible.
Okay.
And so our second product that we have is... it is infused with 3 peppers from 3 different pepper families.
Love it.
And so we chose a roasted Serrano, which has kind of the roasted, smoky notes of a smoked pepper or a roasted pepper. An ají amarillo, which has a very nice zesty citrus flavor to
kind
it.
Of poppy, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then chili piquin, our hot, spicy Texas,
punchy little buggers.
Yes. What is it? I guess the official state pepper.
Yeah. Oh, killer.
It is. And so, but we wanted it to be hot, not too hot, a lot of flavor, and it's an infusion of those 3 peppers, all of which are grown here in Austin in our new make whiskey, and we're calling it Mother Pepper.
Mother Pepper.
Yes, it's spicy. So we thought, and each of these peppers kind of comes from they're higher up in the breeding of their category.
So Blue Label, new make. Red. This is Red Label. Mother Pepper, Red Label.
Orange.
Okay,
label.
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, it's got it's orange.
I'm maybe colorblind, so it's an orange red for me.
The third that we are gonna have available is a citrus flavored whiskey, and it does not have any sugar, but it's an infusion of citrus flavor.
Right.
Using 3 different citrus, Tangelo, which is grown in the valley.
Yeah, amazing.
And we have some of the best Tangelo. Like the Tangelos that come from Texas Valley are a lot more flavor robust than other places in the nation, and so we're really excited about having that local connection.
Sure.
We have Valencia. That's grown everywhere. It's grown here in Texas as well.
Yeah.
And Bergamot. Bergamot is
I love Bergamot.
Yeah, it's great. And
you talk about gin, right?
Yeah. That's right. And so those 3 citrus together, we wanted to have something that would go great in a mimosa or if you wanted to put it as a substitute in your margarita, be something that's good for day drinking, and we're calling it Daydreamer.
Sure. That's brilliant. So new make, Mother Pepper, Daydreamer.
And then our
same proof there too. So we're talking 46 across the board.
For Mother Pepper and for our Daydreamer, both of those are 80 proof.
Okay.
Brought the proof down a little bit, be able to have a little bit more of the citrus and pepper flavors.
But same base.
Same base.
Make, right?
The new make is the same base, so we just kind of bring the proof down a bit.
Cool.
Number
4, yeah.
The last one is still in development. We don't have a name for it.
Sure.
But we wanted to kind of really celebrate sort of what are the clear whiskey expressions of the world, kind of look to other places for our inspiration. And so we actually looked kind of across the pond and looked at Genever or Genever, depending on your pronunciation, as a inspiration for making a whiskey that has a gin infusion in it.
Interesting.
And so that one is still in development right now. Genever, it has like there are different methods for making Genever, but it is much more akin, like traditionally, especially the old style of Genever, much more akin to a whiskey base. Low proof at distillation,
barley-ish.
Lots of things. The malt flavors are really kind of coming out in the spirit, and then it's an infusion of botanicals that are trying to balance with those natural grain flavors. Yeah. And so we intend to make it funky, fun, really kind of turn up the volume on the grain and see what it pairs with locally. We've been playing a little bit with sage and other things that kind of are easy to gather in our area. Yeah. And so we have really been lucky that we found Jason White joined our team going back about half a year ago now. He's a chef. Rye? He was at Emmer and Rye. Yeah. Yes, exactly. He's worked with a lot of chefs kind of all throughout Austin, mainly like in their fermented foods. So like he was previously...
I see his pictures, man. It's crazy. Like, how'd you get that to ferment?
They're amazing. They're amazing. And like with Uchi, he helped with their development of their in-house soy sauce and kimchi. And so he's got like this great local fermentation background, and he really was instrumental in creating, like, just from his relationships with the culinary scene, with the local farms. Has been huge. But he's kind of leading the way in the development of our experimentation with our Genever. So we wanted to have like another whiskey expression that would really just kind of push the edges, not be what you're expecting with whiskey, and make a statement about that. That we are not going to, we don't intend for Austin to be compared forever to Kentucky, Tennessee, or any more so than we would, Scotland or Japan, or Appleton rum in the Caribbean. Like, it should be a spirit that stands on its own, even though we fit within the
parameters. They're loose.
We make is whiskey, so we stick to the standards of identity for whiskey. But we wanted something that would kind of be, independent of this place.
So. It's amazing, finally kind of securing a seat at the table in a sense,
Well, we hope that Austinites will try and enjoy and experiment with us.
Yeah. I don't think I'll have a problem with that.
I don't.
they like to come drink, and they like to come talk about things. They're truly interested in how is this made?
Yes.
And I think that inquisitive mind, especially for people in Austin, it's really exceptional. And it's really lovely to get to share that stuff with them.
It is. I mean, it's the best place for finding that. There's no better market for people that give, and they care about things. Like, this is not like kind of blind consumer taste panels or that sort of thing. It's people that are very interested, and they want to be connected to, and even maybe extend what you're doing.
Totally.
It's a great environment, great ecosystem for innovation, and so we feel really lucky to be here at this time in history, and all the things coming together.
Chris. They're really a wonderful time, wonderful era, makers, creators, thinkers. So these 4 whiskeys that sound really remarkable, and I can't wait. And I hope that once they're out there and you've got to, I would absolutely relish the opportunity to sip it with you.
Oh, we will. We will be doing it.
Good.
We will be doing it.
That's brilliant. So when can we expect these SKUs, these marks, to hit the market?
We really want to focus on the distillery first. So our initial plan is to launch them only there.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay.
Because the problem I see is that while we want people to drink our products, that's that's every spirit maker wants people to be able to
right.
drink them. We have a lot of learning. We didn't hire a formulation specialist to come in and make something that'll hit the target market or any other BS like that.
Yeah.
We wanted something that will speak to our area, and since that has not been done for 100 years, we aren't going to be able to do that, immediately from day one.
Right.
So we wanted, and we also wanted to engage with people who want to engage with us.
Sure.
And so Still Austin is made as a place to come and spend time with us. You can come and do a tasting.
Yeah.
You can do a tour of Still Austin. You can hang out in the whiskey garden, which is just for fun games and that sort of thing. Sign up and do a DYOB.
Yeah.
But we really want Still Austin to be a community space that's a maker space.
That's so different.
And so we didn't see, when we started to look at just all these laws that make it difficult to distribute, I'm sure that you have potentially run into some of those challenges. I mean, not to disparage, because everybody has their own business, but there are distributors out there that if I come in with something that's thoughtful, innovative, and has a couple of years of hard work behind it, the first thing that they will say is, shut up, get out of here, and bring me back a vodka, and don't come back until you have one. That the level of innovation in the distribution model is almost none.
Whole other conversation. I absolutely agree with you, because I've got some very strong thoughts on that piece of it. But I'll tell you this. I think that what you guys are doing is ambitious. I think you'll deliver on it. I think changing the culture of drinking and how you interact with those spirits via Still Austin down there in the St. Elmo district, it's a really bold move, and I think it's really going to work. And it's a pleasure that we're neighbors.
I know. I'm so excited.
We walk out, and I was like, "Oh, that's the build out." I'm pretty sure we can just take a look at it every time.
We can just walk to each other's spaces.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
I don't even have to drive.
Awesome.
It's perfect. So I'll drink a barrel of whiskey, and I'll just walk back to the distillery.
But I was so excited about that too, because I think that there's so much that there is a lot of land in this area that will change over time. It's a great place for spirit making, and I think that we can help each other. Like when you have that shared innovation, that there's why couldn't there be innovation down the distribution chain, or I don't know, we can't, we have these laws that won't allow us to get involved in the distribution,
right?
But if we congregate, then there is an opportunity for other people to think innovatively as well, and you never know what will come of that.
It's gonna be the start of a beautiful relationship, Chris.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah,
I'm excited about
me
it.
too.
The one there's one thing I didn't say that I think I've never said this on an interview before, but I actually think it is probably something that's super important to what we're about. The other and you kind of reminded me of it because you brought up how we're going to launch and stuff. The thing that was so powerful for me about Still Austin is that it brought my dad and I together.
That's amazing.
We have the most beautiful, rich, deep relationship today, from all of the adventures and hard things and great moments. There is no way that I could have a story like I have today in any other thing I could do. Mm-hmm. I have this unbelievable, rich relationship with my dad, who I love very, very much. And I feel his love for me in a way that I have never felt it before. And whiskey is what brought us together.
It's amazing.
And that is, to me, what sharing a whiskey with someone is.
Yeah.
It's not a shot. It's not just getting drunk, although those things can be fun.
Sure.
It's saying, you have a high value, and I'm going to celebrate that.
Yeah.
And to me, that is what I want people to experience when they come to Still Austin. Share something together. Have that time that you're setting aside for celebrating that person and affirming their worth.
It's beautiful, man. I can't top that. Thank you so much for chatting, Chris. It's a pleasure.
Happy to be here, and super, super happy about what's ahead.
Yeah, man. It's looking good. Well, there we have it, Mr. Chris Seal, CEO and co-founder of Still Austin Whiskey Company. The whiskey will soon be flowing. I'm sure that this addition, this innovation, this attention to detail about grains and flavor and textures will be an amazing addition to the spirits industry in general and really put Texas on the map even more than it already is in terms of whiskey. Us Austinites really have something to look forward to, something of the likes we have never seen before, booze-wise. And amazing story about Chris and his father, what it took for them to bond, what it took for them to forge this relationship in a new, elevated, evolved way. I mean, it had to have been really, really tough. It was great getting to share that kind of moment with Chris. It's also really cool to hear about the history of Prohibition as it pertains to Austin particularly. Some little-known facts, some little-known nuggets there, and Chris kind of helping me understand how Prohibition came to be and how whiskey and its history in Texas has really evolved. I hope that still Austin Whiskey Company is yet another punctuation and a new chapter in Spirits for Texas. So thanks everybody for listening to Show to V. No matter how many times you're going to go back and see La La Land because it is beautiful, stunning, yet really, really heartbreaking, or how many times you're going to favorite John Legend owning Trump's tweets, please keep dancing.